What happens when a morning show built on warmth, genial banter, and polished optimism invites a guest who has no intention of playing along? On this particular episode of CBS Mornings, Meghan Markle walked into the studio expecting the usual soft, focused platform, an amiable space where guests are gently guided through predictable talking points. What she encountered instead was Gayle King's calm but unyielding line of questioning and two co-anchors who slowly realized they were sitting at the center of a live, on-air powder keg. By the time the cameras stopped rolling, the royal image, the friendly set, and the unspoken rules of daytime television would lie scattered like broken glass. The CBS studio glowed with its trademark palette of soft golds and creams, giving the illusion of a palace redesigned for Manhattan mornings. Tall panels curved around the background, catching just enough light to shimmer without distracting from the plush couches arranged at the center of the set. Gayle King sat on one of them, dressed in a crisp red pantsuit that matched both her confidence and her clarity. Her posture was open, but there was a poised attentiveness in the tilt of her head. Papers rested neatly on her lap, already organized into the sequence she intended to follow. To her left and right sat Tony Dokoupil and Nate Burleson, both impeccably dressed in tailored suits, navy for Tony, charcoal for Nate. They looked relaxed, smiling easily the way only people used to 4 a.m. call times can. But beneath the surface, something felt different. A tautness clung to the air, the sort of anticipatory hush that made camera operators check their framing a third time and coaxed producers into hovering by the monitors with furrowed brows. "Stand by?" someone called from behind the cameras. "We're coming back in 3, 2. The light above the primary camera blinked red. "Welcome back to CBS Mornings," Gayle said, her voice warm and smooth, as reliable as sunrise. "We are joined now by a woman who is no stranger to global attention. She is an actress, a mother, a philanthropist, and of course, the Duchess of Sussex. Meghan Markle is here with us in studio. Meghan, good morning." Meghan sat on the far left couch, angled toward the trio. She wore a fitted navy dress that skimmed her shoulders and fell neatly below the knee, paired with nude heels and waves of hair cascading elegantly to one side. Though her hands were folded neatly in her lap, her chin lifted a fraction higher than necessary, her eyes cool and composed. "Morning," she said. No radiant smile, only a faint curve of the lips that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thanks for having me?" Gayle's smile didn't waver. "We're glad you're here," she said. "You've been at the center of so many conversations over the last few years, about the monarchy, the media, mental health, identity. Today, we want to talk about where you are now, how life actually feels away from the institution and here in the States." Meghan let out a soft, almost amused breath. "People always want to know how life feels," she said, lifting 2 fingers in air quotes. "I suppose that's easier than confronting why it had to change in the first place." A polite ripple of laughter came from the studio audience, but her tone was unmistakably sharper than the reaction it received. Tony leaned in, trying to lighten the moment. "Well, let's start with something simple. You've been living in California with Harry and the kids for a few years now. What does a normal day look like for you?" Meghan looked at him, then at Gayle, as if debating whether the question merited engagement. "A normal day," she echoed. "I'm not sure my life has ever been normal, Tony. People love to project their fantasies onto me. Some picture me trapped in a castle. Others imagine me barefoot in a Montecito garden reading poetry to hummingbirds." And Nate chuckled. "That doesn't sound so bad," he said lightly. Her gaze flicked to him, cool but pointed. "For you maybe. For me, it's just another narrative people create, so they can understand me in a way that feels comfortable." Gayle's fingers tightened gently around her note cards, though her tone stayed even. "I think what Tony meant was more about your routine. School runs, work calls, family time. The ordinary things, right?" Meghan said, voice still cool. "Well, I wake up, I breathe, I exist, I make decisions. The rest is really none of anyone's business, no matter how much they feel entitled to it." This time, the audience stayed silent, a quieter, heavier response. Gayle nodded. "You've spoken a lot about feeling scrutinized," she said. "Do you feel that now, even in this room?" Meghan arched a brow. "I feel scrutinized every time someone expects me to package my life into digestible, inspirational sound bites. I'm not a quote, I'm a person." Nate tried to steady the energy with a calming gesture. "Totally hear you," he said. "At the same time, you do have a podcast. You've done major interviews. You've written essays. So clearly, you believe in sharing some parts of your story. What makes this different? The question hung in the air like a challenge, and for a brief moment Meghan simply studied Nate, her expression unreadable. Then she gave a small, controlled smile, tight at the corners, deliberate rather than warm. My projects are on my terms, she said at last. This, she gestured to the studio lights, the lenses, the semi-circle of hosts, is on yours. There's a difference. Gayle King's professional calm didn't waver, but a faint line appeared between her brows. She leaned in slightly. Let's talk about those terms then, she said gently. You and Harry stepped back from royal duties, started building your own ventures. Production, philanthropy, speaking engagements. Some people see that as empowering. Others say you've been redefining what royalty means for a new generation. How do you see it? The Meghan tilted her head as if the question itself bored her. I don't spend my time worrying about what some people see, she replied. I didn't leave one institution only to be trapped inside another one, made of public opinion polls. Gayle tried again, her voice soft but intentional. But your story has inspired many people. Do you feel any responsibility to them? Responsibility? Meghan echoed, letting out a quiet, humorless laugh. That's such a convenient word people use when they want access. You have a responsibility to share, to smile, to explain, to justify. I think I've done more than enough of that for one lifetime. A tense silence settled over the room. In the control booth, a producer leaned closer to the glass, watching every flicker of expression on Meghan's face. Tony Dokapel cleared his throat and shifted in his seat. I want to bring Harry into this, he said carefully. When you sat down for that big special a few years back, viewers saw a couple very united, very in sync. How has your relationship evolved since then, especially with all the pressure and public reaction? Meghan's face tightened, just slightly. I always find it interesting when people who don't know us feel entitled to grade our marriage, she said. Harry and I are fine. Better than fine. We've survived things that would crush most couples. So if anyone is waiting for a neat little update, they can keep waiting. Nate leaned forward, forearms resting on his knees. I don't think anyone's grading you, he said gently. I think people just... Meghan cut him off with a swift, precise interruption. People just want whatever keeps them entertained. Today it's me. Tomorrow it will be someone else they can dissect. Gayle inhaled slowly through her nose, the breath almost visible in its restraint. She glanced down at her notes, then met Meghan's eyes again. Steady, kind, but weighted with something firmer now. Meghan, I hear your frustration, she said. I really do. But you chose to be here on this show. You said you wanted to talk about your work, your projects, what's next. Can you tell us about something you're excited about right now? For the first time, Meghan hesitated. The words seemed to puzzle her. Excited, she repeated. I'm excited about moving beyond this constant demand that I explain myself. I'm excited about people learning to focus on causes instead of personalities. She paused, then added with a small, cutting smile, though interviews like this do make that difficult. The jab landed cleanly. Tony's eyes flicked toward Gayle. Nate's jaw tightened for a half second. Gayle smiled, but the edges of it had changed. All right, she said calmly. Let's talk about causes then. You've spoken openly about mental health, especially after your experience in the UK. A lot of viewers connected deeply with that. Have you found healing? Meghan's expression closed like a door. Healing doesn't perform on command, she said. It doesn't show up just because a morning show segment needs a hopeful arc. The audience let out a low, uneasy murmur. Gayle tapped her note cards once with her index finger. I'm not asking you to perform, she said gently, though there was steel beneath it. I'm asking how you are, that's all. And I'm telling you, Meghan replied, that how I am is not a commodity to be unwrapped between commercial breaks. A long second passed with the two women, holding each other's gaze. Gayle, measured and composed, Meghan unflinching, almost daring her to push harder. Nate cleared his throat, stepping in as the pressure grew unbearable. I think what Gayle is saying, he offered, is that a lot of people watching have been through their own struggles. Hearing how you've coped could really help them. Meghan's eyes flashed like a warning. Then maybe those people should seek professionals, she said sharply, not project their healing onto a stranger they've decided to turn into a symbol. Gayle's smile faltered at last, just a crack. Tony shifted again, glancing toward the producers. The energy in the room shifted from awkward to electric, buzzing with tension. Okay, Gayle said quietly, steadying herself. Let's take a breath here. When we come back, I want to ask you about your children, your life as a mom in America, and how you see their future, and whether you still feel connected to the royal family at all. At the mention of her children, and the word royal, Meghan's gaze sharpened. She crossed her legs a little tighter, her jaw set like stone. The break could not come soon enough. Sure, Meghan said coolly, if we must. The camera light dimmed as they cut to commercial, but the tension didn't budge an inch. It lingered like smoke, thick, unspoken, drifting through the studio even as makeup artists hurried in with brushes and producers whispered urgently in corners, recalibrating the direction of a segment that had clearly gone off script. Gayle King sat very still in her red suit, posture poised but eyes locked on Meghan Markle. She already understood what the audience was only beginning to grasp. The next segment wouldn't be a typical morning show conversation wrapped in warmth and soft lighting. It would be a test of patience, professionalism, and the invisible line between privacy and public accountability. And Gayle could feel that line stretching dangerously close to its limit. The band's smooth transition music faded. The red light above the main camera blinked on again. The audience straightened. A few exchanged quick glances, sensing the shift in the air. Something had changed, something subtle and electric. Gayle turned back toward the camera, smile restored, though sharper at the edges. Welcome back to CBS Mornings, she said smoothly. We're here with Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, talking about her life, her work, and what comes next. She angled her body toward Meghan, softening her tone with practiced grace. Meghan, before the break, we mentioned your children. A lot of parents watching today are juggling work, family, and trying to protect their kids from the pressures of the world. How do you and Harry navigate that? Meghan merely looked at her for a moment, one eyebrow lifting, as if silently questioning the premise itself. We navigate it, she said at last, by doing something radical, parenting our own children instead of outsourcing our judgment to strangers. A small, awkward laugh bubbled up from the audience, uncomfortable rather than amused. Gayle let it pass. Of course, she said gently. What I meant was, given your profile and the attention around your family, do you take extra steps? More security, tighter boundaries, things like that. Meghan's lips thinned. Would take the steps any responsible parents would. The fact that people are fascinated by our children doesn't make them any less ours. Tony jumped in, attempting to diffuse the sharpness. Do they understand any of it yet? Do they know they're part of a very famous family? Meghan shifted her gaze to him, cool and unwavering. They know they're loved. That's more important than teaching them their family tree is a global spectacle. Totally, Nate said, nodding. But you grew up with a very different reality. No royal titles, no palaces. Do you ever worry that in protecting them, you might also be, I don't know, sealing them off from a part of who they are? Meghan's jaw tightened. Are you asking if I feel guilty for giving them a healthier environment than I had? And Nate lifted a hand quickly. Not guilty. Just wondering if you ever think about that balance. The balance, she repeated, almost scoffing. Everyone's obsessed with balance. My job is to keep my children safe, not satisfy some romantic idea the world has about princes and princesses in gilded cages. Gayle's fingers brushed the edge of her note cards, not fidgeting, just grounding herself. She had been in journalism long enough to recognize when someone came not to converse, but to parry. Still, she wasn't ready to drop the thread. Let me ask it this way, she said gently. You've spoken before about how painful some of your experiences within the monarchy were. If someday one of your children wanted to reconnect with that side of the family, spend time in the UK, maybe even take on public responsibilities, would you support that? Meghan gave a short, humorless laugh. I find it interesting that people assume my children will spend their lives orbiting an institution we chose to leave. They're not props in anyone's fantasy about the spare's kids. If they grow up and decide to explore that world, that will be their decision. But I won't groom them to serve a system that never served me. Tony nodded slowly. So you don't see them as royal at all? I see them as my children, she replied crisply. The world can label them however it needs to sleep at night. A murmur spread through the audience. On the far side of the set, a producer rubbed his temples, already envisioning the headlines. Gayle inhaled, exhaled, staying steady. I want to turn to Harry for a moment, she said. We've seen him in interviews. And in his book, speaking very candidly about his family, about grief, about feeling like despair. How is he doing now? Meghan's expression softened for a fraction of a heartbeat, then hardened again, as if catching herself in a moment of vulnerability. Harry is Harry, she said vaguely. He's finding his way, as we all are, away from structures that were never designed to protect him. Does he miss them? Tony asked quietly. His father, his brother. A flicker passed through her eyes, an irritation, a bruise, something unspoken. I find it remarkable, Meghan said slowly, that people who watch those same individuals fail to protect him still insist on framing everything around what he might be missing. Gayle held her gaze. Calm, steady, even as the room braced for whatever came next. Families are complicated, Gayle said gently. You can be hurt and still miss people. It's not always either or. Do you ever see a future where there's real reconciliation? Meghan's lips curved, but the expression wasn't warmth. It was something sharper, almost dismissive. The future is not a talk show segment, she replied. And reconciliation is not a storyline you wrap before a commercial break. Whatever happens between Harry and his family will happen privately, if it happens at all. Her words hung heavy in the studio. Even the audience, who had grown used to the oscillation between careful politeness and simmering conflict, seemed to hold its breath. But you've shared a lot of that journey publicly, Gayle continued, her voice still calm but now edged with something firmer. Documentaries, interviews. Do you ever worry that telling so much has made private reconciliation harder? A quiet settled over the set. Meghan's eyes sharpened, cooling by a degree or two. What I worry about, she said, each syllable deliberate, is this persistent expectation that we should prioritize the comfort of people who benefited from our silence over our right to speak. Gayle inhaled softly, nodding. The point was understood, even as something in her expression signaled that this interview had drifted far from the usual morning show terrain. All right, she said at last, resetting with a practiced smile. Let's talk about your life here in America. You've said you feel more free now, more able to define yourself on your own terms. What has surprised you most about this chapter? Meghan tilted her head, the slightest flick of boredom in her eyes. How unwilling people are to accept that I've moved on, she said. They claim they're tired of hearing about the monarchy, yet every interview, every headline drags me back to that world. It's as if they can't tolerate the idea that I might exist beyond their fascination. Nate leaned forward, hoping to lighten the moment. Okay, let's go beyond it then. What brings you joy right now? A project, a daily ritual, anything. She looked at him as though he'd asked her to solve a riddle. Joy, she repeated, skeptical. Joy is private. It's not something I'm obligated to display so people feel better about the noise they create around me. Got it, Nate said quickly, tension flickering in his voice. Just asking. Gayle gave him a small, appreciative glance before stepping back in. You've said before that you're tired of people wanting pieces of you, she said, and I respect that. But you and Harry have also chosen to be public figures. You've signed deals, created media about your lives. Some viewers might be thinking, if you don't want to share, why keep doing interviews like this? What would you say to them? Meghan's eyes hardened. The frayed edges of her patience were now unmistakable. I'd say those assumptions are exactly the problem. People imagine I'm here because I'm desperate to be seen. Maybe, just maybe, I'm here because I'm constantly asked to defend myself. Sometimes it's easier to walk into the fire than pretend it isn't burning. The metaphor landed awkwardly. A few audience members shifted, exchanging unsure glances. Tony and Nate exchanged one of their own, the look of men watching a conversation slip out of their control. Gayle, still centered in her red suit, breathed in slowly through her nose. When she spoke, her voice was softer, but no longer yielding. Meghan, I want to be really clear, for you and for our viewers. We invited you here because we believe your story matters. Because hearing directly from you has value. We're not here to attack you. But we are going to ask questions. That's our job. Meghan's chin lifted. And my job is to protect myself from being turned into entertainment for people who will never understand the cost of leaving. That may be, Gayle replied, warmth now threaded with unmistakable steel. But you are on a television show. People are watching. They're trying to understand. And when every question is met with hostility, it makes that harder, not easier. A murmur rippled through the audience. Finally, someone had named the tension. Meghan leaned back, folding her arms. A small, incredulous smile ghosted across her lips. Hostility, she echoed. Is that what we're calling boundaries now? Tony cleared his throat. No one is criticizing boundaries, he said cautiously. We're just acknowledging the tension. I think our viewers feel it too. Gayle didn't break eye contact. We can take a short break, she said neutrally, and reset a little. Meghan's smile tightened into something sharper. If you need one, she said. I'm used to difficult conversations. For the first time, a true flicker of irritation crossed Gayle's face. It vanished quickly, replaced by professionalism. She turned to the camera, serene but clipped. When we come back, we'll talk about Meghan's work, her foundation, and what she wants the public to focus on, if she's willing to tell us. The band picked up the cue, the red light faded, and CBS mornings cut cleanly to commercial. But inside the studio nothing felt reset. No breath, no pause, no easing. The tension that had been building for nearly 20 minutes now sat thick and unmoving in the air. Meghan stared straight ahead, jaw locked. A makeup artist hovered nearby, unsure whether to approach. Gayle shuffled her cue cards with more force than she intended. Tony leaned back in his chair with a low, exhausted sigh. Nate dragged a hand over his face. What had started as a tough interview had become something else entirely. A slow-motion collision everyone could see but no one could stop. And, instinctively, they all knew the hardest hit hadn't landed yet. The atmosphere in the studio shifted from discomfort to something sharper, heavier. Even the muted hum of the cameras felt louder, tense. Meghan sat tall in her navy dress, chin lifted, legs crossed neatly. But the posture didn't read as confidence. It read as superiority. Gayle's signature red suit glowed beneath the lights, but the warmth she was known for had vanished. Tony and Nate exchanged quick glances. They felt the unraveling. Everyone did, yet Gayle made one last attempt, one final act of grace. Meghan, she began softly. A lot of viewers wonder how you and Prince Harry navigate parenthood now, simply as parents. What's been the biggest challenge? Meghan blinked, then offered a small, dismissive smirk. Challenge, she repeated. I suppose the challenge is that people feel entitled to every detail of our lives. It's exhausting. Honestly, Gayle, that question feels a bit elementary. Tony shut his eyes for half a second. Nate exhaled sharply. Gayle kept her voice calm. I apologize if it came off that way. I only meant. But Meghan cut in again. People always want to hear about the kids because it makes me relatable. I'm not here to be relatable. I'm here because I have something meaningful to say. I thought that was obvious. A ripple of discomfort moved through the audience. Silence pressed in. Gayle held a soft smile, though her jaw had tightened. Okay, she said gently. Let's shift a bit. She flipped to another card. Your time in the UK. Your experiences there shaped many of your current projects. When you look back, do you feel? Meghan sighed loudly. Gayle, why does every interviewer insist on bringing up the past? I've moved on. Everyone else should too. It's only because your perspective matters. Gayle started, but Meghan rolled her eyes, actually rolled them. That depends who's asking, doesn't it? Nate straightened. Tony subtly shook his head, silently pleading for calm, but Gayle pushed forward, determined to salvage a single meaningful response. Let me ask something simple then, she said. Are you happy right now? Truly happy? Meghan laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. You make it sound like I'm some tragic figure searching for peace. I'm perfectly fine, more than fine. But constant questioning makes it difficult to enjoy anything without people twisting it. I understand that, Gayle said, nodding. But do you? Meghan shot back. Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like you're boxing me in with the same narratives I've heard for years. I came here expecting depth, and instead I'm getting recycled tabloid talking points. The room froze. Tony lowered his head. Nate closed his eyes. Gayle inhaled slowly. When she spoke, the warmth was gone. What remained was controlled, unwavering authority. All right, she said quietly yet firmly. I need to stop you right there. Meghan's eyebrows lifted, offended. You've interrupted nearly every question, Gayle continued. You've dismissed the questions, you've dismissed me, and you've dismissed this audience. Meghan crossed her arms, bristling. I'm simply being honest. Gayle shook her head. No, you're being disrespectful. An audible gasp moved through the audience. Gayle pressed on. We invited you here in good faith. We asked thoughtful questions. We tried to give you space to share what mattered to you. But instead of conversation, we've received contempt. Instead of dialogue, we've received attitude. Meghan shifted, discomfort creeping through her posture. I don't appreciate the tone, Gayle, and I don't appreciate being talked down to on my own show. Tony reached toward her arm. Gayle, maybe. But she lifted a hand, signaling she wasn't done. I won't let this become a spectacle of arrogance. Not today. Meghan narrowed her eyes. What are you saying? And Gayle met her gaze steadily. I'm saying this interview is over. Meghan, I need to ask you to step off the set. We can't continue like this. A stunned silence filled the studio. Slowly, Meghan rose, gathering what remained of her composure. This is unbelievable, she muttered. Thank you for your time. Gayle replied, unmoved. Meghan turned sharply and walked off the stage, heels striking the floor with clipped precision. The audience watched, breathless. The moment she disappeared behind the curtain, Gayle exhaled, then faced the camera, poised, steady, resolute. We'll take a short break, she said softly. We'll be right back. The lights dimmed. The segment was over. The interview was finished. And Meghan Markle had been dismissed from CBS Mornings, live on air.